I'm the development coordinator with Community Partnership on Aging. Welcome to our second month of No One Tells You How to Get Older, because nobody really does tell you how to get older. So we decided we would try to tell you how to get older. We have a couple people joining us today. I'm going to turn it over to them, but just a couple quick housekeeping things. This is being recorded. We will upload it to our YouTube channel after the recording is over. And so anybody can watch it after the fact. If you have any questions, you can always shoot us an email or give us a call. And I will go ahead and turn it over to Nate to do his little introduction.
Well, my name is Nathan Gradisher, but you can call me Nate. I work at Hospice of the Western Reserve. Hospice of the Western Reserve provides palliative and hospice support, as well as caregiver support to those facing serious and/or terminal illness. We have been doing so in Northern Ohio as a not-for-profit entity for well over 43 years. And we have offices ranging in location from Sandusky all the way over to Ashtabula down into the Akron area. So we provide really the idea of my coming on to the presentation today wasn't necessarily to talk about how people will need hospice and palliative care for themselves, but how we can support caregivers. And I mean, obviously, if a person feels that they may have a need for hospice, we can address that. But I wanted to make sure that we discuss the opportunities for caregiver support that hospice has and volunteerism as well.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yep. And Mary Molnar, introduce yourself.
Okay, thank you. My name is Mary Molnar. My company is Senior Care Authority, and we specialize in senior placement and elder care consulting. My husband and I, Mark and I, own the company. We've been around for about 3.5 years. We have 3 areas of focus. One is senior placements, where we don't work for a particular community, but we help people find a community that best meets their needs if it's time to transition from home to some kind of senior living community. And then we also offer elder care consulting and Beyond Driving with Dignity. Elder care consulting is similar to a geriatric care management. I rely heavily on my background as an occupational therapist through when we're kind of delivering elder care consulting, because we just help people with all things aging related. Most commonly, it's just a listening ear and then some really thoughtful vetted referrals. With our Beyond Driving with Dignity program, that's a facilitated self-assessment, where if there's an older driver who is considering either on their own or because of a doctor's recommendation, family pressure, if they're considering a retirement from driving, they can contact us and participate in our facilitated self-assessment called Beyond Driving with Dignity, and then make a collaborative decision on whether or not that should continue or if they should retire from driving. So once again, it's Mary Molnar from Senior Care Authority.
Nice. So as I I don't know that I really got into this this month so much. Last month, what we talked about was the best advice that you ever received. And again, so the topic isn't focused on so much on actual ways to help people as much as it is general advice. So this month's conversation starter is, what is the best advice you have for staying young, and what does staying young mean to you? Because truly that could mean something different to everybody. Anybody have any thoughts? I think that staying young means, here comes Leanne. So in 1 second, I'll stop and I'll give Leanne a chance to introduce herself. Hey, Leanne. I think staying young does differ to everybody. So I think that's really kind of my thought is that that's the most important message of it, that you do whatever you need to do to stay and feel young.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And then looking for those tools to help you stay young. I will go ahead and break for just 1 minute so we can say hello to Leanne and give you a second to do your 2-minute elevator speech. Hi, Leanne.
Hi, how's everybody doing today?
Well, thanks. How are
Very
you?
well.
So my name is Leanne O'Brien. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer with the McGregor Foundation. We are a continuing care community located just north of in the intersection of Mayfield and Lee Roads, adjacent to Forest Hill Park. And, now more than ever, I think, our seniors are looking for choices in aging services. I think we all in the industry have the power to change that, by opening doors to some of the services that we offer. I know we are doing that through our continuum, certainly at McGregor. And, trying to also introduce the public to the variety and the full spectrum of services that they can rely on. So, keeping them informed and providing them with that information and resources obviously is our primary goal. So we have the independent and assisted living on our campus, as well as nursing, rehabilitative services, and also McGregor Hospice. And then, of course, we also have the McGregor PACE program offering 3 locations in Northeast Ohio. We are the only PACE provider in Ohio. There's 42 across the country, but we are the only one in the state of Ohio.
Welcome. Thank you. And we also have Mary Norris Pack joining us. But Mary, I have you signed up for May as one of the quote presenters. So you will have a chance in May to talk about your organization, Benjamin Rose. So anyway, back to our staying young topic, which is, what is the best advice that you have received for staying young, and what does staying young mean to you? Anybody else have any thoughts on that?
Well, I can hop in. I just agree so wholeheartedly with what you were saying, Teresa, about it being individual. It's a highly individual, specific to yourself topic and reality. When you did send us that prompt, like, what's your advice for staying young or something like that? And what I thought of was engagement. And what we typically talk about is social engagement and how very, very important it is. And, we talk as a placement professional, we talk about isolation and how dangerous it is for older adults to be isolated. But we can't force a person who has not been very social their whole life to all of a sudden be very social and say, well, this is what you have to do to stay young and engaged and healthy, right? We can't say you have to go to bingo and that's the answer. So it could be engagement in anything. It could be engagement in, you're engaging in nature, you're engaging in your spiritual life, you're engaging in exercising your body. So whatever it means to you. So just like that really resonated with me when you said it's a personal decision. But I think engagement, if we were going to, break it into or minimize it to one word, that would be my word.
That's a good point, for sure. My mom always ends up being my example when I talk about things, because she's a good example of what you just also mentioned, which is that you can't force somebody to be social. My mom is a helper. She likes to volunteer, but when it comes to being social, she really doesn't care about being social. She's very happy staying at home. And of course, we were worried about her, over the past 2 years, but she, for the most part, is happy as a clam. She's happy to get out now, but you're right. You can't force somebody to do anything. And I think, we get a lot of phone calls, you guys probably too, from children of older adults who say things like, I want my mom to.
Right.
My mom needs to, and it's all for sure from a place of heart, but those are often the more interesting situations, I think, right? Because I guess it depends on the situation, but yeah.
I would say another thing is enrichment or life enrichment. Because if you can find things that enrich your life to your liking, whether it's like, as you mentioned, your mom, Therese, volunteerism, or if it's, physical exercise, if it's a knitting, whatever it might be, going to church, whatever the case may be, I think it's the enrichment that, really in the end is what keeps people going and motivated. And, that is obviously controlled by the individual, but it's also controlled by what they like to do, whether it's a hobby or whatever it is. I think, today's society, everybody is so afraid of aging. There's such a stronghold on ageism and the negative implications of that. But I think if we can find ways to transform confidence, even in some older adults, that, find ways that they can be independent longer, that if they see people in nice situations, connecting, enjoying whatever they're doing, I think that gives them the confidence to think, well, I can do that. I can try that. So it's, it's all in baby steps too, just like everything. But I think, really it's about life enrichment.
Yeah. No, and I think one of the things that people need to do is really look at things sort of with an open mind. My dad is someone who is very bound by routine and doing things the way he's done things in the past, the way things have always been done. And I think I have a brother with a disability, I have a brother with autism, and that is a part of autism as well, is the routine and the repetition and consistency. And it's really hard, to watch my dad and his peers, not break the mold of what they're doing. I have an in-law who loved playing handball, and when he was a little older and handball wasn't something he was able to compete as a high level at, he took up tennis, and he's really great with tennis, and he's had some reconstructive surgeries on his hips and on his knees, and he's not as able to play tennis. And I'm trying to encourage him to try pickleball, because I think that is something that would fit his range and abilities, and I think he'd find success and joy in that. But I'm a tennis player. And it's like, well, but if you had a little bit more of an open mind about the approach of different things and how you can, use skills that you have and have success and kinship and relationships with the other players, I think it's something that would be of benefit to you. But it's hard to get people to change old habits and be open-minded to address the new things. So I think some advice that I would give is to sort of say, look at things open-minded and be willing to try and do new things, like, to Leanne's point, volunteering.
Yeah. And then, the other thing that made me think of when you were talking about routines is that's actually, alternatively important too, as you get older, to keep, to sort of maintain your routines for memory's sake. So, there sometimes then has to be that fine line between it all, and navigating that fine line can, I'm sure be difficult to remember a couple of, because my mom actually volunteers with us, and I remember a couple of times where she she volunteered in the kitchen, and they would say, well, where's your mom? And then I would freak out going, oh my gosh, my mom's never late, something surely happened, and then it turns out she was just like stopping somewhere before she came to the community center. In the meantime, I drove all the way to her house, like freaking out, because God forbid Julie, does something, like, just
True.
but yeah. And, that also reminds me about our conversation. Nate and I were talking before we started about just technology, and getting into that groove where it seems like we have different sort of sets of participants who are either really tech savvy but don't care and aren't attached to, you know, the internet and our phones like we are. And then you have the other subset of participants who are a little, you know, reluctant to even get on internet. So trying to kind of navigate all of that too. But it all helps to keep you young. I think it's important. Engagement and enrichment, it's all really important.
You know, I think one thing that the pandemic taught us was people found other ways to communicate. You know, we couldn't do in-person meetings anymore. And so we obviously went to virtual programming, which more and more people seem to really enjoy that method of connectivity and found that they could participate in more things without having to hop in a car and drive everywhere. I think the other side of it was just reaching out to people either with a phone call or a note, but it kind of boiled down to being asked. You know, people will respond in most instances very favorably if they're asked. And, you know, as I kind of relate to, you know, younger people coming into the workforce, but more mature individuals leaving the workforce. But, you know, at 65, maybe even at 70, they're not totally ready to really leave anything. And sometimes in our industry, I think there is definitely opportunity for that encore position that kind of like that movie with Robert De Niro, The Intern, right? I think that we forget to tap into our mature colleagues and people in the community who bring so much value and experience and expertise and knowledge and just some fantastic stories about you know, how they can you know, alleviate maybe some of the challenges that we're all facing or some of the challenges with the clients that we're trying to help because they can associate with them so much better than maybe a younger individual, even though there's opportunities obviously for the whole spectrum of ages to contribute in various ways and shapes and forms. But you know, as you start to think about, gee, what are you going to do for your second act? You know, I think that's a great opportunity just to ask these individuals to contribute whatever it may be. But of course, you've got to find out, you know, where their passion lies, where their interest lies. But you know, we had a woman reach out to us, you know, in the early months of the pandemic, and she said, you know, I'd really like to be a pen pal to some of your residents. And so we came to the agreement that maybe initially we weren't going to necessarily give out resident names or anything, but if she wanted to, you know, write kind of generic letters to individuals, if the resident then chose to want to be able to respond back, then we would make that introduction. But we had so many letters coming in, not just from her, but from the community. It was amazing. I mean, we felt like it was Santa Claus at the North Pole with the amount of letters that our volunteer service coordinator had in her office. And I didn't believe her at first, so I had to go down and take a look in her office. And I said, Judy, where are all these letters? And she pulls out like 4 boxes from underneath her desk. Just load. Yeah. I mean, so we had so many that we had to space them out because you couldn't just throw all these letters at people, you know. I mean, you had to kind of space them out over weeks and months to do that. But that part was amazing, how people wanted to contribute and relate that way. And you could just see, you know, faces light up and people get a lot more, again, engaged because, you know, maybe they hadn't written a letter in a long time. They had to, you know, beef up their penmanship. But I think thinking about that second act and you know, encore opportunities as well.
Yeah. One of the things that somebody mentioned last month was about community and, you know, having a community of whoever that might be as you get older as something important too. And I agree. I think, and it can vary, you know, it can vary to, you know, your taste, interest, you know, how introverted or extroverted you are or whatever it might be. But I do think it's important to have some kind of community, and that could be, it doesn't have to be family. It could be a made up community of, friends and people that you meet at the community center too, or, at the nursing home or facility, wherever it is that you are. I think we all look for that, kind of like-minded ness in people too.
Mhm.
So.
I think about a lot of times, so I spend a lot of time in different assisted livings, and my favorite is when we have an adult child going and touring and selecting a place. But on the rare occasions when I actually have the older adult with me touring communities, they always show the activity calendar, and the best community relations directors are not the ones that say there's bingo and there's happy hour and you can do this, period. They're the ones that say, tell me what you're interested in. And if that is not on the activity list, they'll give an example of a time when another resident started a group, and because it was what they were interested in. And, we had an ex-professor who was, really missed teaching. So we started a weekly resident-led kind of class. So that's the best. And when they can give examples, so they practice what they preach, it's great. When I was in grad school, I did my, whatever they call it, my graduation big project, on retirement and engagement, basically occupations in retirement. And what we found overwhelmingly is that people do not start new interests or activities, hobbies. They don't start for something that's totally different to them, overwhelmingly so. But there was a good chance that they would continue or re-engage in something that was important. So what Leanne said really resonated with me is, you want to volunteer, let's kind of dig into what have you done in the past that was interesting to you? What successes have you experienced? What have you enjoyed? And we can try to recreate that in your next act. So rather than totally changing, going with a person's routine and history.
I totally agree. I think that, a lot of times, generally, when you think of an older adult, you see an older, frail person, and that's what you see, right? You see that older, frail person. You forget that they were a younger, active person, that they had a life. You know what I mean?
Right.
I think people, kind of tend to forget that. And, we had participant, a resident and participant of ours passed away not too long ago. And I kind of surmised, I hadn't seen the obituary, but her daughter unsubscribed from our e-news. And I thought, gosh, I think that means that something happened, so I shot the daughter an email, and it turned out she had passed away at the end of 2021. And, as I was then researching, I found her obituary, and it turns out, all these things that I never knew about her. And I was like, my gosh, you know what I mean? This makes me I feel like in a way that we fail people if we don't find out those things about them, because, their life has value. And, it's not just, you're not just the lady who's, struggling to see or can't walk or whatever, I think it's kind of our duty in a way to help bring that to light.
Yeah, we had somebody who actually created a patent for the Glidden Paint Company.
Wow.
And you're like, wow, that's pretty wild, or
it is.
Yeah, or another gentleman who owned a very well-known bookstore for years on Shaker Square.
Oh my God.
And was known, I think, throughout that side of town as the guy to go to get certain type of literature or books, or, you know, he even had some collectibles. It was funny. He even taught our CEO how to restore a damaged book. I walked into the office one day and I'm like, what are you doing? He had this book all pulled apart and he had, you know, the gloves on and glue and everything else. And he said, well, Richard was teaching me how to restore this, the book, the binding, the whole bit, you know? So yeah, you're right. You know, in a former life, when I was with Emeritus Corporation, they were really big on creating a resident profile for everybody that moved into the community. And it really was digging deeper and learning more about their history, their background, you know, what they had done as a career. One woman was worked at NASA. And you never would have thought that looking at her, but you know, as you started to kind of open that dialogue and to have her tell that story, you could just see her, you know, beaming with pride at what she was able to contribute to that organization. But then you discover ways within your community on how you can provide that opportunity for them to share that talent, because that's the other side of it, is not only just recognizing it, but then trying to find a way, if they're willing, to kind of continue on some other path or continue to attribute it to teaching others, whatever the case may be. But yes, we actually brought in students from an elementary school, and she was talking about space and the planets and you know, so here we created a new career for her. She didn't even know it right away until the kids just kept wanting to come back and hear more. So
Wow.
Yeah.
Love
We
it.
had somebody, when I worked at the nursing home right out of college, we had somebody who was a local sculptor and never ever would have known that unless, you know, somehow, I forget, somehow it came up with the family. And I ended up doing a whole slideshow program with her art. It was pretty interesting.
Wow.
Yeah. You know, just
some talented individuals out there, right?
Absolutely.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, a woman I met in the Women's City Club of Cleveland, she taught at one of the vocational schools here in Northeast Ohio. And she taught computer classes, you know, to young girls who maybe weren't going to go on to a 4-year college degree, but at least wanted some additional experience. And we found in her second life, because she tried to retire twice and then kept going back to work. But finally, she makes jewelry.
Wow.
And she
Nice.
teaches jewelry making classes or you know, wrapping the stems of wine glasses, things like that, at the local library.
Wow.
And who would have thought? And that becomes so popular that it's part of the library's curriculum now.
Wow.
So yeah, so you know, it's kind of hard to imagine these things happening sometimes, but just through conversation, you strike up some touch points and you're off and running.
Yeah.
I'm interested
That's great.
in, I know that Nathan didn't want to talk about hospice necessarily, but something that we were talking about made me wonder, you know, what if we start talking and we start digging because we're honestly curious about someone's life, but then it's painful. And, you know, do we push because they want to get it out, or do we say, oh, I'm so sorry? Or, you know, is it just depend on the
Absolutely.
situation?
It does depend on the situation. And I can tell you, working in hospice care, it's a little bit different, but we have an entire team around the patient when the patient and family and caregivers when the patient is in our services. And that includes bereavement support. It includes social work support. It includes spiritual care. And those are 3 areas that I think can really do a lot to help to contribute to helping people overcome some of the more challenging aspects of their history, some of the more challenging aspects of their life. In hospice care, we do a lot of legacy work. And that's something that, you know, I think all the things that we're talking about in learning a person's history, where they worked, what they were about, what their hobbies were, what they enjoyed, what they had a passion for, all that contributes to a legacy. And I think if we can get people to share that information, people to share their stories, share their identity, share what made them them, made them unique, can all contribute towards building a legacy and having a story that they can share with their loved ones, and that they can share with their, with their children, their children's children, their friends, their neighbors, the people that they socialize with, family of origin, family of choice, all those things that we talk about. That's a really great thing that we can do to help people build legacies. And you don't have to wait till you're on hospice to do it. You can record so many people prior to the internet were into genealogy, doing it a certain way. Now with the internet, it's much different. But my grandfather did so much work in genealogy, and in the course of that time, he also told his story about working as an engineer with Flexible Bus in Loudonville, Ohio, and going, learning engineering as more of a trade as opposed to a college. It was more of a college route. So he became an engineer, was highly skilled as an engineer, but he didn't necessarily go to Case to do it. So that was just an interesting story to hear from him, because I was like, well, don't you have to go to college to be an engineer, Grandpa? He's like, no. And he would show me the things that he helped design for the buses. So it was just, so those are the kinds of things that we can, they came from the conversations about, Daughters of the American Revolution, and resources that he found in the community to help him figure out where we came from and who we were and what we were about. And then it became a little more granular about what was he about? What did he enjoy? I didn't know that he liked to bowl. I didn't know that he was a boxer until he started telling me about lineage and family history. So it was very interesting thing. So recording that history and having those stories that we can tell is a vital part of reminiscing, and a vital part of aging, and a vital part of identifying ourselves and feeling whole as a person. So I think those are also, thank you, Mary, for bringing it up. And I don't mind talking about hospice. I know just people hear the H word and get a little intimidated at times. So thank you.
Well, and Nathan, to your point, I think some people have found that through technology today, that's a good way for them to talk about what they want when the end of life comes, because those are very hard conversations for the adult children to have with their parent. I know in our family, nobody ever talked about any of that.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
And so through technology, you can kind of, do that. And I think, and then who knows what comes from that. But oftentimes I think people give their reasons for why they want things a certain way. And then you learn a lot more about, them as an individual. So yeah.
Now, Leanne, you're so on point with that. And it's interesting because we're only a few days removed from National Healthcare Decisions Day, which was April 16th, which is a national effort to get people to talk about their healthcare proxy, their healthcare priorities. And it's really, from my perspective, and I think the perspective of a lot of other people who are close to conversations about advanced care planning, living wills, healthcare power of attorney, it's almost, if not more important, to have those conversations that Leanne referenced than it is just to sign the forms. The forms are important. The forms are vital. It is important to do them. Please don't mistake what I'm saying as you don't have to do the forms, just talk about it. You have to do both. The conversations are so vitally important, because the person that is speaking on your behalf may have to make decisions for you, but the ideal is that they already know what you want, and they're able to just relay the conversation, just relay the desire, the need, the interest. And that's something that I think is lost on a lot of people who just don't want to talk about it. I don't want to do it. I don't want to do the forms. And physicians are much better now than years ago about initiating the conversation, but it's a very involved, it can be and should be a very thought out process. So just, sort of impulsively answering the questions is one approach, but I think really digging in and having a deep thought around what you want, and then having a deeper conversation is really, really important.
Well, and also about the financial aspects of things sometimes, because that can be, really a tough factor in families with multiple children. If a family has a will or a trust in place, that pretty much sets the precedence and makes it easy. But if you don't know, what the family assets are of that individual, it really saves a lot of time and negative energy if that's somehow put in place, telling everybody, where things are, who gets what, how it's going to be divided up, and so on and so forth. But
absolutely.
Yeah.
And that does cause so much strife and challenge among family members. And it's terrible when people have, a limited time left with us, and that limited time is left arguing over
Yeah.
things that aren't really as important. And that's,
Yeah.
or even after they've left us, then arguing over things that aren't really that important. But it gets sensitive, and it gets personal, and it gets emotional, and that's really tough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's
Leanne, I
important to
think
have
we
those
have to-
conversations.
I think we have to see your puppy. Is that your puppy? We hear a dog.
Oh, no, not me.
Oh, who's Mary? Is it yours?
No.
Oh, is Carolyn? Is that who has a dog?
Well, I'm at the office, so I'm puppy free.
I have a little
Fine.
kitten that's trying to get in.
Aw.
Oh, but
She's
it's not.
so cute.
Is that your dog, Mary? We have to see.
No, I have one, but it's not him.
Huh.
Must be Carolyn then.
I don't
Yeah.
know.
It's so funny. I keep on looking at him, but he's like, he was laying there. But now,
Aw.
Aw.
So sweet.
Oh, that's a beautiful dog.
Aw. What is he? A Labradoodle?
no, he's really only 18 pounds. I think he's overweight. He's a mix between a cockapoo and a beach poo.
Oh, he is so cute.
So
But he
cute.
He does look a little bit like Carolyn's dog.
So he has a lot of hair right now. He's not eligible for a haircut yet.
Well, I'm not either, but that's for different reasons, as you can see.
Well, that's definitely one way to stay young.
Absolutely. Oh, pets are a great way to stay young. That's a great point, Therese.
When my dad passed away, my brothers and I thought, we should get mom a dog. And she nixed the idea. And then I got a dog. And at the time said, I said to my mom, I'm not home a lot, would you be willing to, come and take her out for a walk or, whatever. And she said, yeah, absolutely. Well, that turned into, which ended up being this great setup. We actually shared my dog. So I had her like 3 or 4 days, then my mom had her 3 or 4 days. And, it actually ended up working out really well, because in the end of my dog's life, she actually ended up spending more time at my mom's house, because my mom has a fenced in backyard and a ranch where I had none of those things.
Mhm.
And so she was actually able to, kind of help her a little bit more. Now she has her own dog. Yeah.
That's great.
That is great.
We created a monster with that.
That's another way to stay young and engaged, is to have something to take care of,
Yeah.
be it a plant or a kitty or a dog or a loved one. I'm working with someone right now who is really struggling because she was the caregiver of her spouse who passed away recently for years. It wasn't just like at the end. He had some disabilities for many, many years. And so she's really lost right now. And, the family is inserting their opinion on things.
Yeah.
Well, mom needs to
Yeah.
go to the rec center. Well, mom needs to.
It's totally different, isn't it? Have you seen those? I believe it was somewhere in the UK. I want to say, where they were trialing something with dolls in skilled care,
Mhm.
but
I
they
think I did see
weren't just dolls. They were lifelike
Mhm.
baby dolls,
Mhm.
and you would just see everybody, like light up, and that natural caregiving instinct would kind of kick in. Yeah.
Yeah, there's some controversy around that type of thing.
Really? Huh.
Which, there's a lot of people who are highly offended that you're infantilizing, or whatever the word is. That's a big word, but you know what I mean?
I see. Interesting.
An older adult, and it's disrespectful to who they are.
Interesting.
But I've seen video after video after video where a doll brings so much comfort, and it just reminds them of the nurturing, loving human that they were in some
Right.
past life. So,
It's interesting.
maybe
So
the negativity comes from a misunderstanding of dementia. It's
Yeah.
typically people with dementia who are kind
Yeah,
of
yeah.
regressing.
Yeah, right, yeah. Because I was gonna say, I guess that kind of goes along with, you know, the dignity of what you want versus what somebody's telling you you want.
Right.
But yeah, oh, that's so
Mhm.
interesting. I never would have thought that that was controversial.
Yeah.
Very
So what if
interesting.
what
And
if
again,
someone
it is
just says
2022.
over, oh, sorry.
No, I was just sort of quipping that it is 2022, so
Yeah.
things are different. Go ahead, what we're gonna say.
What if someone is just saying over and over, this is what I want to do, which is so many older adults who we would say they are not staying young, they are not staying engaged or active. How do we educate against, encourage, whatever, when they say, I watch TV, I'm fine with Blue Bloods is the favorite. You know, me and Tom Selleck are just fine together. Leave me alone.
love
Mary, go ahead, what we're gonna say.
I love watching Blue Bloods though.
Yeah, you know what, I mean, that's a good question, I think, and that does make me think of my mom again, because she says that exactly. I love my Blue Bloods.
Me too.
I guess maybe the answer lies somewhere within being okay with it, but monitoring, for lack of a better word, maybe, you know, just you know, doing some check-ins and, you know, watching for other signs of,
Mhm.
Frailty.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
You know, or
yeah,
the
are
word,
they, yeah,
yeah, or the word and, Blue Bloods and volunteering, Blue Bloods and a pet, even if
yeah,
it's a fish. You know,
Mhm,
so
mhm.
that's, you know, so,
yeah,
you know, or, you know, not just Blue Bloods, I'm not trying to make light, but, you know, there is certainly things that bring people comfort and relaxation, you know, but maybe something that has a little outside, so, you know, something different, something new. I'm a big advocate for trying new things for people of all ages, but especially those who are, you know, more experienced, try more experiences.
You know,
I think a key word is listening. Go ahead,
Mm.
Mary.
yeah, my church did, and because we weren't having in-person service, and a lot of years don't have technology or know how to use it, including my mother. And the pastor and his wife did little drive-bys. Some groups gave out cards, and you know, we have a sick and shut-in list that every month our mission women send cards to them and a church bulletin to make sure that we kind of stay connected. The deacons have a responsibility of checking in on their membership. So my daughters both just got a card one day this week from church just saying hi, we miss you, and they are 22 and 32 because they haven't been seen at church. As a flip side, and people ask, you know, where's your mom? When my father passed, I was like, oh my gosh, what is my mother gonna do? And she's not old. She's able to move around. She won't have knee surgery, so she has bad knees. And we just do the check-ins. And I told her if she doesn't answer that cell phone, I'm gonna take it from her. I went to the Indian last night and I set my phone down, and a couple hours so in, I saw my middle sister had called me 6 times between her and her husband. So you know that's off an alarm for me. And it was she went by my mom's and her car was there and she didn't answer the phone. The neighbor didn't know where she was. And by then everyone was panicking and I called her and I was like, oh, she went with her one friend. But she normally tells somebody, but she told me and I didn't answer my phone right away.
Mhm.
So we have a little system that, you know, call and then ask the neighbor, check on your neighbors. She used to be really more engaged when my dad was living and now not, but she has a non-negotiable Friday nail appointment. There's a clique of them. and they all have back-to-back appointments on a Friday. And some of them just gonna get a polish change, but they have a rotation. And I was much younger going to this salon with them, but like a little 2-year-old. Now that I'm much older, I'm like, I can come on a Friday every now and then. I take actual vacation time so I can go to the salon and just talk to the ladies. One's a retired teacher, one's a social worker, so on and so forth. And one just recently passed, and I promise you, I thought one of my own aunties had passed away. And that changed the dynamic of Friday because she had this appointment. So my mom just took her 12 o'clock appointment, which freed up her 9 or 10 o'clock appointment. And so once a month, I take my mom's appointment. And they have a little clique that check on each other. None of them have ever worked together. None of them have kids that went to school together. It was just all from the nail salon.
Wow.
That's cool.
When I'm out and talk to seniors, I do try to listen to something is important to them. And with some of my network groups, I then try to incorporate something for that person, especially if that person is an outlier. Like, I'm not a bingo person at all, but I'll do it for the spirit of the team. But for that person that doesn't like bingo, but she'll come, I'm like, let them help. Let them be in charge of the prizes or rallying the people to come down. So find something that will make them feel important. Mary Kay always did this thing. The person that showed up to the meeting first got to wear a little banner. It was 2 pieces of paper with a hole punch at the top to make a little banner on the front and back that says, make me feel important. And you had to take a Post-it note and just write positive things on it and stick it on the person's back. They had their name on the front, and then on the back was just blank. And then at the end of the day, you got to take that piece of paper, an 8.5 by 11 home, and that would make you feel good throughout the week until we met again.
That's a great idea.
That's wonderful.
So I try to incorporate some of those jewels of wisdom from somebody much older than me as I engage with older adults more often.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the listening is really important. Because you're listening and watching for those other, signs, whatever they may be. I'm glad that your mom was okay too.
Mm-hmm.
I told her, I was like, I'm gonna take that phone.
Yeah, I was checking on my aunt and I say, you know the drill. If you don't call us back in 15 minutes, we're coming over. So you have 15 minutes from whatever time it is. And
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I was in the bathroom. Like, you're allowed, but you're just not allowed to do anything that takes more than 15 minutes.
There you go.
One of you guys said when we were talking about encouraging engagement, and somebody said kind of watch and assess and reassess. When I have families that are telling me, they're not sure if maybe their older adult is just slowing down and they're just truly kind of getting towards end of life and their world is getting smaller, and that's okay. And we shouldn't fight it anymore. Or if it's because they're not being given opportunities to engage. So I say, think about the last time you did something. Think about the last time he went to lunch with his friends. He came to a family dinner, whatever it was. Was he so worn out that he asked to go home early and he slept the whole next day? Or was he energized? How much kind of argument was it as you were getting ready to go? Like, all those things is, because we should never assume you'll be better off if you go to this family dinner. We should never assume that.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
kind of monitor how they react.
Yeah, that makes me think of something else too, because again, using my mom as an example, and you mentioned, Mary, their world getting smaller, just sort of naturally that does change. You don't want to drive as far, But then, you know, part of that question could be too, why don't you want to drive as far? Are you not, you know, comfortable driving far anymore? You know, are you having vision problems, hearing problems? You know, do you get nervous driving, you know, where it might be very crowded? You know, there's a lot of questions that I think, you know, that can be asked rather than just assuming things
Their
too.
world is getting smaller. Mhm.
Yeah. And again, it's
Great
okay
point.
for the world to get smaller, but you know, but then when the world does get smaller, then a lot of other things change too, because the world gets smaller. So yeah, boy, wow.
Yeah, some of you, have you heard of Village in the Heights?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So the one thing that we do is our happy hour, and our happy hour is pretty funny because prior to the pandemic, we would rotate from a neighborhood eatery and go to happy hour. And then when the pandemic hit and we had to do everything virtually, so we did virtual happy hour. And my 22-year-old would come by like, can they see me? Can they hear me? And most no, I would like click the camera back off. But the one time I let them see her and she said hi because she was so intrigued in the conversation. So she's standing at the steps, kind of in the background listening. And we decided, well, let's pick up some pizzazz, like one appetizer or something for each person. And we dropped it off. Some of the board members, we dropped them. So they would have their snackadoos and whatever, and talk about who's drinking a glass of wine. And the one lady is very regimented and she goes, well, I have to eat promptly at 5 o'clock. And sometimes the meal delivery and we wait for her to come back and that kind of thing. But now we're back in person and a new member said she couldn't drive. And we're like asking those questions. Well, it's not that she can't drive. She can't drive at night because of her vision. And she doesn't want to have someone in the car with her because she's afraid that if her vision blinks on her, she doesn't want to put anyone else in harm's way.
Mhm.
So we do those social skill assessments on anyone that joins the village. So we would know, because I asked her, I did the intake. I'm like, so you said no passengers. Can you help me understand? And so we make sure that someone either picks her up and can take her home, or we wait until she can drive when it's going to be a daytime activity and not, you know, she has to be gone before it gets dark. And I think her car knows it's a way home, but we don't want to put her in harm's way. And we go on the walks over at Acacia or Beechwood Mall with the seniors, and we try to have some of the younger people go, just so they will not think it's just the old folks walking group, perhaps. And I really thoroughly didn't think I would enjoy hanging out with them as much as I have, being probably one of the youngest people in the group as far as being on the board. So my daughters have taken on that same passion of being aware, and one being almost a caregiver to her grandparents. She stays with them a lot because they're up there in age. So, and she's very aware, like grandma won't take her medicine and granddad will. Granddad wants breakfast, grandma barely eats. And, you know, the kids are all in their 20s and 30s, all have a conversation about the grandparents, and they're the grandkids. They're not the kids. And then they in turn get to tell their parent, you know, well, this is what so and so said. So the person that's in charge of medical can step in with
Mhm.
hearing it from observation. So me working over the senior realm, I didn't think would be a keeper, but it's been so enlightening as a keeper.
Mhm. Yeah.
Very interesting.
Wow. Well, gosh, I guess I would say the takeaway of this conversation, to kind of wrap things up, I would say are conversations and listening, maybe, and engaging. If we're gonna, I'm just going to throw out some keywords: conversation, have conversations, listen, engage, enrich, find what works for you.
Mhm.
Not, or what works for your parent or loved one, rather than if you are the caregiver.
Don't assume anything.
Don't assume, right? Yeah. Yeah.
Nice.
Wow. Wow. Well, nice conversation.
Yeah,
So
thanks,
good.
guys.
Thank you guys for joining us, for engaging. Anybody is welcome to join in for each month. That would be the Zoom link. Next month, we'll have 3 new panelists, for lack of a better word, who would get to, talk about their company, their 2-minute elevator speech. But anybody is welcome to join. So you're welcome next May, although I will be on vacation next month.
All
Carolyn
right.
will be leading the conversation next month. So
All right.
anyway,
Enjoy your vacation.
Well, safe
thank
travels.
you. Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you. Thank you. All right.
So
I
nice
will,
to engage.
yeah, talk to you guys very soon.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.